good morning, or GM, as they say. We have all met each other in the last few minutes, and we've all worked on many overlapping developer communities over the years. So maybe raise your hand if we're going too fast or using acronyms. I think I'm bad at moderating, so help me if I let too many unexpanded acronyms pass. But yeah, so I guess one place to start is just by like defining a few terms, like what's a community, what kind of incentives do you work with, what's the community you're working on now. We could maybe go around and self-introduce in that terminology first kind of way. Is that a rude place to make you start, Marta?
It's great. So building communities is really about this orchestrated serendipity, and I think that's what we're doing here. We're just trying to figure out what we need to talk about. So my name is Marta. I am currently the executive director at Filecoin Incentive Design Labs. However, I've been in this space, as in Web3 blockchain space, since 2014. I was one of the first employees at Blockstream. Then I went to Hyperledger, where I was director of ecosystem. So I was building a community of enterprises, which is a whole different beast. And then went on this adventure with Web3, helped out with building the Balancer DAO, or decentralizing Balancer Labs, and a bunch of other projects. And then ended up at Consensus, because a lot of people end up in Consensus, I guess, where I was leading Web3 engagement and DAO strategy for 2 years. And now I'm at Fiddle. So different communities, different ideas. I think that the one thing that is very common in all of it is that our industry, very different to almost any other industry, is based on the community. Like, that's the first thing. I remember when I was starting at Hyperledger, being the director of ecosystem, that was just such a foreign idea, and nobody really noticed. Like, every talk I was giving, I was like, this is what my role is. And nowadays you have all of them. So I think that it's interesting that it is a space which is like primary focus for almost any project, and like where you start building, rather than an afterthought, which is in most other places.
Hi everyone, Tamar from Solana Foundation. I actually now lead the stablecoin direction and foundation, but I have been growing our ecosystem globally for 4 years now. So when I joined Solana, it was a very small community, and now we are taking pride in the strength of our community. We always say that even our tech is proof of stake, our community is proof of work. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that yeah, having a community as the top priority for all different ecosystems has been the case in crypto, and I think one of the reasons why I love our industry is the fact that it's such a priority to make sure that proof of work on that side is also working. And Vicky, maybe you can take
Proof
over
of commits.
You're so humble. You have a very great community, actually. Okay, my name is Victoria. I'm one of the co-founders of W3 Group, now an ecosystem consisting of several things, 2 investment funds, a co-working and community space, and a media and education company, and now also infrastructure and staking. So all sorts of things. Initially, we started as a plain VC investment fund, and that was 2-3 years ago, and there was actually not really a community that we could reach out to. So we were starting our own events because we knew a lot of people and we wanted to learn from them. So we invited them into our not co-working space. Back then it was just our office. We had like 60 people, a couple of pizzas, and we called it W3 Pizza. We provided some content, wanted to teach others as well what we were looking into as a fund, and that was actually quite of a success. And this is how our community journey sort of started, to really connect with other communities that are way smarter in their initial niche, so to say, or industry. And yeah, since 1.5 years, my focus is on the W3 Hub, which is a co-working and community space, and where the folks from Solana were actually our very first, I would say, communities that were hosting the events, hackathons, and all sorts of things, really taking this physical space to provide value to the people.
Okay. Yeah, and I should probably mention my communities that I'm currently gardening. So I guess I work a lot on the Chain Agnostic Standards Alliance, which is a Web3 standards venue that I'm giving a talk tomorrow about it, if you're curious. I work with Robin, who just spoke on IPFS and libp2p governance, and also like IETF, W3C standard stuff for IPFS. And I also, hilariously enough, have been working for a year on the Activity Pub community, which is one that not a lot of people in Web3 even know exists. It's kind of a Web 1 community, maybe a Web 0.9 community if you want to get really snarky. So if you have any questions about those random other communities, find me outside. But yeah, I think one thread we could pull on is the sort of non-financial, non-reputational aspect, because Solana's community is sort of like powered by hacker houses. There's this co-working space that wasn't even a co-working space originally. There's a conference circuit that a lot of people here are like literally on. I found out earlier today I scheduled a recurring meeting that most meetings of this every 2-week meeting will conflict with major crypto conferences that one of the participants has to go to for funding purposes. So thinking a little about this, yeah, like meet space, serendipity, like how do you see like just getting people in rooms together post COVID? Play, you know, how big of a part of community building is that for you and the projects you're working on now?
I guess I can start.
Any answer.
Yeah.
Any
So
order.
I think that there is something that is very interesting. I actually did not know that before we came here. But something that is an interesting thing to observe is we are so like into being online, and yet most of our interactions and most of the actual work happens in person. And like if something before COVID, like you'd go to a conference and it was just you went there, and yes, it was mostly the hallway tracks and so on. And nowadays it's like month-long, 2-month-long events that are just like one after the other. Like we are all, I'm guessing, going to Bangkok, right? And there is the like month-long thing in Chennai before that and so on. We are really like invested in building those, and well, Edge City as well, that travels now into building those physical interactions, and we really want to be together. I think we're just a little bit too fed up being online. I don't know, or maybe just alone during COVID. And I think that the fact that the incentive itself is to be with other humans. It's like you don't have to pay anyone to be with other humans. You don't have to convince them that this is a good reputation building. So I'm actually really curious to hear about the proof of work.
Yeah, I think initially we also started with like online hackathons fully, but then we realized, okay, we really needed IRL side of things. So first ever IRL hackathon side event was actually in Berlin. We called it Build Station. Very important IRL experience was also, I don't know if you guys know Mountain DAO. So they are also something that showed us the power of coming together and just like founders hanging out together for like a month. So I think it was a process, right? We didn't really realize the of being like as a community together till we actually started on a small scale, and then we really scaled up. Now we have a full events team who is doing all the time, the whole year, hacker houses. Now we have in September Breakpoint as well. But I mean, honestly, I think the key thing is when you bring people together, you as a community lead also want to have fun. So I think we always had that in mind and always made sure that people who come there enjoy the experience. It's not just coming together for the purpose of hacking, but also multiple different social experiences as well. Even though people think that developer community is a little bit more introverted, I think it's actually other way around. When you are in a trusted environment, it's actually much more deeper relationship and experiences that you have. So yeah, that has been the logic and starting point for us. And now, yeah, pretty much every week, even this Friday, right? We have with you guys IRL experience for developers in Berlin. So that's the major part of where the ideas are born. Initially, it was for the hackers to just connect with each other, but then we realized, okay, there are different layers to it as well, because once crypto is with cycles, comes with cycles. So like you can't just service newcomer founder or developer. You also have in the room experienced ones. So mentorship became a really big part of it, and knowledge transfer became really a big part of it. Then a lot of people just fundraise through those IRL events as well. They don't even have to pitch proactively, to be honest, to VCs directly, right? They are just with their friends talking about what they are building, and then they get the follow-ups from VCs that probably they didn't even know that were in the room. Yeah, that has been our experience. And Vicky and her team has been the great success part for us in the region. She's like, no.
Stop. I actually think it's quite interesting that for us it's a bit different. So we started with our event series back in 2022, where we invited people and where we showed and provided content, because this is how you usually do it. When you host event as a host, you provide things. But when we had the chance to check out the space that we're now hosting at Möckernbrücke, Gleisdreieckpark, there were 3 floors open, and when we came in and were being offered to get the space, we were like, okay, we just take everything, even though our team is basically consisting of 10 people. But our very first thought was, this could be an amazing space for the Web3 community. There are a couple of physical spaces around in Berlin, but still, why not having more of them and really providing a space for everyone to feel welcome? And this is what we're basically building physically, but also digitally with our network. And in the end, it's so underestimated how much of a change a physical space can have for people to, even though everyone is working, let's say 4 or 5 days a week at home, but then one day you just meet what you guys are doing now with the co-working Fridays. You just have a space, people can come in, they can work together, they can work alone, but at least you have these small touch points with everyone around. And I think it's quite unique because Web3, even though it's a niche, has still so many different characters, people, blockchain networks. Everyone is kind of getting some value by just talking to other people and learning from them. And this can happen online, but it's still very difficult. I mean, we're humans. We like to be around each other. Like you said in the beginning, we want to be in touch with humans. And I think it's just a really good extension to have, now you can see it as you want, like, is it an extension to have something physical to online or something online to physical? But in the end, we now see ourselves rather as a provider of this platform for people to meet, rather than, yes, this is our community. Let's, like the Solana has a Solana community, but I wouldn't really say we have this one W3 community, but rather the different vehicles to support others to do their things, because sometimes budget is missing, marketing is missing, reaching the right people is missing, and for some reason this is something we're now quite good at, and this is how we can support. So that's our state of the game right now.
I have actually a question for all of you, which is, how do you make those? We are talking about the physical spaces and so on, but the reality is, I live in Cambridge in the UK. I can't come to your awesome events, right? How do we make the communities inclusive of people who might not be able to travel or are on this other side of the world, or even like don't speak the language as well, or don't feel comfortable attending?
Or disability.
Yeah, or disabilities, yes.
Yeah.
Can I share our experience? I think we actually believe in super localized communities. From day one, I think we launched a program where you could just apply for a small grant. We call it Insta Grant, and in 24 hours you get a budget to host event wherever you want. In Germany, for example, it's not just in Berlin. We have so many small cities where they just host, a community just hosts themselves the event. So first, when you start, maybe the budget is smaller. Then the actually application part says literally proof of work. And then once you have a track record of hosting events, then the budget can also increase. We have also the concept of super teams. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar. I can't see, even if I ask, I can't see the hands. So I was quite, yeah.
Yeah, get ahead.
So those super teams were also coming from an idea that we really need to decentralize our community. So we pretty much look for active members in all parts of the world. Doesn't matter how small or big the city or the country is. And now we have active communities that we don't even proactively know about, but they just exist. And automating the processes is actually a pretty important part to service the community. So you have to have the processes which are super simple to plug into, and you don't need too much like human resources to kind of check the process itself. Vicky, you want to take?
Just a short comment to that, like the way that you are doing is actually really, really cool to have some kind of an umbrella thing, and then you have the local communities just doing their thing and being connected through basically the brand or the network. For us, it's very difficult, and I don't have the perfect answer because mainly it is the physical space that we're building the community around. But I think also obviously when being in other cities or during other conferences, partnering with the local people and co-hosting events together is one part. And on the other hand, from our side, so wherever you are in this world, if you at some point are in Berlin doing amazing stuff in Web3, you should at least have the feeling that you're always welcome to come to the space, even though it's not perfect for everyone who cannot travel, but at least the opportunity and the doors are open if for some reason you happen to be in Berlin.
Well, I'll come visit you then.
I think that's a really admirable organizational form of saying like anyone anywhere can found a cell of this viral. I'm not sure how far to go with the cell metaphor, but speaking of cells, one interesting thing to think about would be how you mentioned like what's the network and what's the sort of binding outer perimeter, right? Like what's the tent with Solana? There's a tool chain. There's a blockchain and all its concomitant um, financial and technical armature. With Berlin, there's Berlin, but thinking like of what a Web3 like social or labor market nourishing platform would look like, I think one interesting point of comparison might actually be the Chaos Computer Club, because they have cells in like every German city. I won't get into the Feta camp, like the Fediverse version of this, but the Chaos Computer clubs around Germany do have this sort of like if you're traveling and you just like open the paper and you see there's going to be a Chaos Computer Club event, you know exactly what the conversations are going to be, what the sort of mood is going to be, even if you've never been there and don't know anyone who's going to be there. That might be an interesting thing to think about. Like the Chaos Computer Club is partly held together by the annual conference and the every 3 years sort of music festival. But like something like that is kind of interesting, thinking about what a Web3 version of that would be, or a multi-chain, chain agnostic version of that would be. Maybe that's Web3 Summit. I mean, maybe we do this every 3 years and it gets bigger each time. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. There are a few things. One is the fact that we actually need to get better at building the bridges between communities. I went across Bitcoin, Ethereum, permission blockchain, and now Filecoin, and it is really like
Four silos.
It's 4 silos, and every time, like I've met a friend or a person that I used to work for at Consensus yesterday, and he was like, "So what is really Filecoin doing? Like, why would you go?" I'm like, "It's such a awesome community and so on," but like there is no bridges, and like I don't know what Solana is doing, and probably I should. So I think that kind of multi-chain universal community is important, and that's something that we should be learning from the like previous iteration of just building open source communities, because like it sometimes feels like we're trying to reinvent the wheel. And Mozilla, back in the day, I worked with Mozilla for a while, had amazing ambassador community, and like Opera, same thing. They would go to universities and teach kids about the opportunities and so on. So it was really like we have those rails, But I think we are so sometimes focused on building our local community that we forget to bridge between those.
We're too close to VC.
Yes.
You know, it's like Porfirio Diaz said, like the great curse of Mexico is being so close to the United States. VC is like breathing down our necks, and VC structures Web3 more than any previous form of software. But yeah, maybe that's my personal opinion. I should moderate more. So yeah, like, what do you guys see as the next sort of steps in building these bridges between the various Web3s and the other forms of decentralization and neo governance, whatever?
I guess people, like, all of us care about self-custody. All of us care about just making sure that that part is productized, right, and comes to reality. So there are some themes that are super strong for all the communities. So
Yeah.
definitely interested in supporting all those cross-ecosystem efforts. And also, I think protocols like Wormhole, for example, we are very much supportive of those cross-chain efforts that they put together in Code Club, or like um, those organizations who are building awareness and just making sure that this first cohort of developers that are just being introduced to crypto, you're there to talk about different type of tech that they are able to use once they enter Web3. Yeah, those efforts. So we see quite a lot. I think we participate as well. Not always it's offline. Sometimes and many times actually we do it online as well. Helps with scale. But yeah, offline maybe. I'm personally, I'm also just like, for example, Token 2049, right? Those are the cross chain. I don't know if we can call it that way, but cross chain communities coming together. Those are the event like this. It's great. Would love to double down. Yeah.
So for us, it was always important to, since I would never consider myself being part of this very one community, and as I've mentioned before, we're basically providing the platform. We realized that even though it's totally all right to be in your own community, in your niche, I mean, these are your peoples, you exchange about the things that you're passionate about. If we have the same or similar goals in terms of making Web3 better for everyone and more accessible for everyone, you also need to be open to cooperate with others, be it blockchain networks, but also, let's say, so to say, the mainstream or Web0 or whatever, like everyone who wants to participate or everyone who might have problems where this technology could be a solution. I think we need more openness and more also, be it events, be it other like online things, to bring these people together to kind of learn from each other, because otherwise we are just developing in our own silos. And this is something that, at least looking into the future, we want to also like accelerate into that direction.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one is just diversity that we bring by connecting communities, which is important because otherwise we're just echo chambering ourselves. But the other thing I think is also that there's only so many people in Web3, and so I sometimes worry, especially when new projects start. It's like, well, so how do I now convince people? Basically have to steal people from another community to come to build to my community, because like the hope for just introducing new people into Web3 is much harder. So now we are just all kind of competing for attention, and because of how many projects there are in this space, and everybody wants their community. You know, back in the day with operating systems, you had like a few distros of Linux. Well, there wasn't really a Microsoft community, but yeah. So it's like, you know, there were 10 projects maybe to compete on, and now it's like hundreds and thousands of projects, which makes it hard to build a community, I think.
Well, I mean, to some degree, it's a zero-sum labor market, and the developers go wherever price go up,
Yeah.
to some degree. But in a way, if you're thinking about it in terms of like labor market health, it's actually not a bad thing for Web3 talent in all scales, not just technical talent. But there's actually a lot of common sense in having a more like flexible, adaptive labor market that can go wherever price went up last month many times in a year. And I do think like maybe just on a totally operational level, there's something to be said for having like cross-chain afternoon on day 2 of every single chain 3-day conference. Like there is some sort of long-term benefit to nurturing flexibility and having more of a I don't know, having some bigger tent. I know like one interesting precedent here is Protocolberg, one of Berlin's excellent Web3 conferences, which had like no corporate sponsorship. It was sort of slightly anti-VC, and it was really good at cross-pollinating because so much fascinating, innovative stuff has happened in these various silos that the other silos haven't heard about. So like just cross-pollinating, like getting people into rooms and being like, all of you are reinventing sharding 10 different ways for 10 different VC ecosystems. Like, can you guys just have lunch, please? Like, I think we need to sort of like those of us in organizational roles should try to make this happen as a sort of multi-year process because like the first few won't have immediate obvious impact. It's sort of a long-term directional thing to be like, all right, we're going to try to make every blockchain conference a little more multi-chain and a little more sort of big picture. So yeah, phone up that Department of Decentralization. Call Maria Paula, ask her to program a panel of your conference if you're watching this, conference organizers.
No, I 100% agree with you. I think that one of the really cool things about Web3 is that you can kind of do a day in this project and a day in that project, assuming that you're onboarded and you actually know how to do it, because that's the onboarding part is a little bit tricky. So if we can make it easier to onboard to different projects, it's like that's the dream, right? I don't have to focus on one thing. I can focus on one thing that I really enjoy doing across different platforms.
Oh, am I supposed to moderate? Yeah. And so we've kind of been using ecosystem, community, and labor market interchangeably, but one thing we haven't talked too much about is like actual code, open source tooling, open source specifications, open source design. Like, how do you guys think, or maybe you guys, I don't know, how do you guys think of the what separate metrics or what separate mechanisms make for a good open source community specifically?
Do you mean in terms of ease of onboarding? What you have yeah, I think
Great place to start.
yeah, for us, actually, the general number of developers that we are onboarding is a really important metric.
Yeah.
And how many of them keep developing over the time. A little bit disagree with the previous conversation because I think that actually our community has been taking pride in having loyal founders and developers.
Nice.
And I do think focus is important, especially when you're building something in crypto. So yeah, we always try to make sure that not only that our developer DevRel ecosystem is there to service newcomers, but also I truly believe that mentorship is really important part.
Yeah.
And passing down the knowledge. So we do have a lot of community grown dev educators that are just spending all their efforts and time to open the doors to the next person coming to the industry. And we really want to double down on those efforts. So tooling part is pretty much the biggest, I would say the budget in terms of the grants allocations is going to the dev tooling. Yeah.
Yeah, more office hours. You need developer office hours at conferences.
Actually, our team hosts weekly. We use Discord. They do
Nice.
have weekly
Okay.
office hours as well, and then it localizes to different communities. I think even Super Team Germany has their own office hours for developers as well.
What about non-developers? How do you onboard non-developers and get their
Who?
contributions?
Who?
Just kidding, just
Who are
kidding.
they? Is the question for?
Yeah, I'm just curious. Sorry, I'm just a curious person,
Yeah.
so I want to learn from you.
Yeah, I don't think that We have different types of engagements, of course. This specifically dev tooling, yes, but we have Solana ecosystem is very much famous for NFT community, creators community, meme coin traders. I don't know, Gen Z, right? So I think everyone has its own taste. So that's why I'm understanding. Part of my job was always to understand, okay, what are the needs and what are the type of people we interact in the community, and make sure that you hear out their ideas. So being open to new formats, new ideas is something that we have done it like for 4 years. I don't think anything that we started initially is the same format anymore. Like we reiterated multiple times. So that's our way to do it. I think also community hosted initiatives is super important part, right? So you don't have you can't expect that everything will come from, I don't know, a team or like a couple of community members. It has to be pretty much um, decentralized way of sourcing ideas as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
um, and okay, so we talked a little bit about breadth and depth, right? Like cross-chain flexibility, but single chain sort of mentorship, and because you do need to think about like the distribution of expertise across a labor market. You can't all have people that have been here one of the last 10 years trying to build actual flywheels and products and stuff. And so like you, in some sense, there's cooperation, in some sense there's co-opetition, in some sense it's straight up competition for attention. So how do you think about the sort of necessarily zero sum brand warfare of Web3, of like in what sense are all chains always being compared to each other as like primary loyalties?
Well, I think something that is very interesting as we were having this conversation is that we are not like we are really veering away from talking anything about like financial incentives or rewarding volunteer time, which is I think unique in some way compared to like the open source community, right? Nobody ever expected to be paid for contributions to your Linux distros or anything like that. And today it's very hard to like not be bombarded with questions when you run a community of like how much will I get if I produce this feature. Like it's all kind of financially incentivized in some way, which I don't think that it should be incentivized. It should be rewarded. Like you should be rewarded for the time you spend on the project, but you shouldn't. That shouldn't be your goal. Your goal should be loyalty to the project and the passion that you have for that project. And you can have passion for multiple projects. So I hear you about the loyalty, but I think that I could be passionate about 2 or 3 different communities and be loyal to those 3 communities. That's a lifestyle choice, I guess. But I think that's the important part, right? That's what would drive the ecosystem, or I think drives that developer ecosystem. It's passion for the topic or the idea. People in Filecoin are really believe in decentralized storage and the need for the preserving knowledge for the future of humanity, and that's like all they want to do, and they might go to different projects to contribute in different ways. And like we have a very close collaboration with Solana actually, but we kind of I think that's it. Sorry, I'm rambling.
Passion, not attention.
I like the reward part a lot, and I just want to add that I think it's not to underestimate how important branding still is, and the vibe that you're creating, because being incentivized financially is one thing, but I mean, the people, I'm very biased sitting here because we work a lot. We're working together basically. But I mean, I can see everything that you guys are creating, the environment, and really also on Twitter or on X, and everything that people can consume from you. You're creating this very open community, and regardless of being a developer or not, I would feel comfortable because of what I see that you create. So even though, let's say, you are working in the best ecosystem in the world, so to say, but if your community is not that open, or if you do no marketing at all, sometimes you don't need it, but to be honest, we live in a world where it's just important to have an X account and to share things and to make people aware that these things happen, to create a little bit of FOMO. It's just part of the game. And in the end, I think this is what creates the really loyal people in your community, because you've been through so much together, you've been doing all of these things. And I think, yeah, that's really, really important as well.
So for us, yeah, I mean, a self-sustainable ecosystem is the term I think explains what we are trying to build, right? I think we believe that your first crypto should not be bought but earned. So when we actually, that was the case with me as well, so I do honestly live by that, right? So I think that's always the main goal when Vicky talks about opportunities. That's exactly what we always keep in mind when doesn't matter if you're a newcomer or if you have been with us as a community for a while, you keep receiving new opportunities, and it's not from one source only, because you see those founders who become successful, build incredible products, and then they generate revenue, or they, I don't know, they have resources to allocate to people for certain specific tasks. We have bounties, we have, I don't know, multiple job opportunities that are created by those new projects, right? So I think as like coming from like as an employee of like as a part of Solana Foundation, right? I think at this point we don't see us at all as someone who is a central resource provider, but rather community effort, an ecosystem effort of constantly creating opportunities for people to earn out of crypto, and see it as a full-time job for them. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. I was expecting blinking lights or something.
Red,
time?
leave. So I think we're at time, right? Is that why we see you coming down?
Oh,
Yes.
Okay.
Good eye. Yeah. Sorry. I've been using my hat to just ignore the world.
He was there for 15 minutes.
Well, yeah. Just a quick round of where to find us, what to Google for.
Come to W3 Hub, we'll be there.
Yeah. It's a physical address.
Merkantstraße 120. Just come to the space and just ring the bell and come in.
Come talk to me. I'm also like really boring on email. So it's marta@fiddle.tech. So yeah, I'm old.
I'm Bumblefudge. It's pretty easy to Google Bumblefudge. It's not a lot of collisions. Okay.
Thank you.